Welcome back into the Pick and Roll NBA podcast with Jet and Sap, presented by Full Press Coverage. We have an explosive story to talk about today. ESPN released a very long but fascinating expose on the Phoenix Suns and sort of their toxic culture and organization, specifically at the head of it, led by their owner, Robert Sarver, but not just limited to him, also a lot of executives. The story details a lot of racism, misogyny, basically any sort of bad corporate behavior that you can imagine. This story touches on it. So we're going to react to all of that right now. Sap, we were initially planning on talking about the Celtics and the Lakers and some other stuff, but this story is there's just way too much here to pass up.
Yeah, it's far too big. I mean, we can always get into the trials and tribulations of the Celtics, the Lakers, the rest of the league, but this is explosive. I mean, if you're watching the NBA today on ESPN, which is on every day for 1 hour, like 55 minutes of it was dedicated to this story that was dropped by Baxter Holmes, a very respected reporter for ESPN, and that's all they could talk about. They even had Vince Carter on, who played with Phoenix about a dozen years ago.
Right, that's right. I forgot that he did.
Yeah, that was kind of crazy. I mean, he talked about how he went to Phoenix, got traded away because Vince Carter felt like played for every team in the NBA. And when he went back there, Sarver was like instructing his players to take him down, like take Vince Carter down. So obviously it appears that Sarver is some sort of hothead who is also sexist, racist, cheap, all of those things. But the interesting thing about this guy, Jet, is that he seems to be a walking contradiction, right? So, and I do encourage everybody to read the piece by Baxter Holmes if you've got a spare hour. I mean, it's quite in-depth.
It is long.
Good. Yes. It is long, but that's fine. It's worth the read. But here's someone who is being accused, and I believe that Baxter Holmes is an outstanding reporter, and we're going to believe him, as a Sarver being sexist, racist, cheap, all of those things. Okay. But he also is someone who's supported progressive causes. If you remember back in 2010, SB 1070 was this bill that they were passing in Arizona, which was essentially your papers, please. Like the law enforcement could stop someone who looked like an immigrant, whatever the hell that means, and right, ask for their papers, right? So, and he pushed back against that. He was very vocal against it. A few years later, in the mid-2010s, he was putting money up for police reform, because it had gotten out of hand in Arizona. And I know he supported Joe Biden for president, but what that leads me to is they're crazy people on the left and right? You can be on the right and be sexist, racist. You can also be to the far left, be sexist and racist. You can be somewhere in the middle and be sexist and racist. They come in all shapes and sizes.
Yeah, sure. Your politics don't necessarily have to do with how you act, especially in a setting like this, where the article talks a lot about how most people are thinking, who most of the sources in this article, I should say, seem to think it's mostly about power with Robert Sarver, not necessarily that he's going out of his way and saying the N-word because he's a racist or saying misogynistic or sexist things because he's a sexist. He very well may be both of those things, but most of it seemed to be the perception that he was just trying to exert power. And that, to me, is the least surprising claim in all of it. I mean, that sort of tracks for me, Sap, is that, a billionaire, which all the owners of professional sports teams are, want to, even though they have so much money, they still want to exert control and power over every employee aspect of team control. So, I mean, that to me tracks perfectly with, take out his politics and whether you think he's racist or sexist or not. Him abusing his power, I think, is really at the crux of this article.
Sure. Well, throughout the Me Too movement, right, just as many, if not more, Democrats, people who considered liberal, were accused and found to be part of that Me Too. I don't even know how to describe it, but they were part of not the Me Too movement. They weren't trying to, they're trying to cover up their own discrepancy. So whatever. I've lost my train of thought.
Me Too perpetrators, I guess.
Perpetrators.
I don't know.
There
right?
you go.
Yeah.
That's a good one. Yeah, like they were the reason because of Me Too. It's so like I said, you can come from all, and we've seen this with the vaccination, right? Like everyone thinks that the anti-vaxxers are all on the right. Well, no, there's a lot of anti-vaxxers on the left. I think Kyrie Irving is considered pretty progressive. Aaron Rodgers, who we're going to talk about later, my favorite quarterback and part owner of the Milwaukee Bucks, is considered the most progressive of all the NFL quarterbacks, and apparently is an anti-vaxxer. Not apparently, is an anti-vaxxer and a blatant liar to go along with it. So yeah, they come in all shapes and sizes, and he was using the N-word in totality, not just saying the N-word, because he was wondering why Draymond Green could use it. And then Earl Watson, who was his coach, said, you can't use that word. And I know Earl Watson, how long did he last as head coach of the Suns?
Not long.
Not long. He probably wanted to, just get up and get out of there. And it didn't work with Sarver. So this is similar in some sense to what we've heard about Daniel Snyder with the Washington football team. And look, the NFL really covers up a lot of things about its owners for the most part. And that's why they pay a commissioner $64 million a year. That's what Roger Goodell gets per year. He essentially falls on the sword for all of these owners. And we're not going to find out the details about Daniel Snyder unless the Washington Post or the New York Post or ESPN or someone really digs deep. The NBA is more likely to force ownership of a team, as we saw with Donald Sterling with the Clippers 7 years ago. The only thing, Jet, is with Sarver, there's no audio or video. And unfortunately, we live in a world now where unless you have it on audio or video, no one believes it, or it can be he said, she said. People will support either side. Look, remember Ray Rice 7 years ago? Nothing was really going on there until we saw the video. And then it was like, oh, okay, he did do this. And the same thing with Donald Sterling.
It's great examples, Sap, and I think that's very true here. It's hard for the NBA to force any sort of issue here and force a sale because they can't necessarily pin him down on any of this stuff, everything. And part of why the article was so long is because every point Baxter Holmes made, Robert Sarver, more specifically Robert Sarver's team of attorneys, had a counterpoint for it or an excuse for it or something like that. So, there's two sides to every story. Obviously, from my perspective, I believe most of the story. It just, we've heard Robert Sarver's an a-hole for a long time. It seems like where there's smoke, there's fire. I mean, there's some pieces, and I'll get into it in a little bit, that I think I look at a little bit more skeptically than others. But on the whole, I believe, the most of the piece. The problem again is that, like you said, Sap, there's no audio, there's no video. So there's no way to definitively say, okay, he did this. He said the N-word. We know for a fact he did. I believe he did, but that's not enough to force a sale of a team. That's the problem the NBA is going to have is facing right now.
Yeah, exactly. And again, this is a league that is 80% Black. So obviously the players are going to be up in arms, as they should be. Even last year, I think it was Draymond Green was telling Devin Booker, get the hell on out of there. And then he was hit with a $50,000 tampering fine, which, I love Draymond Green because he has no filter, and that's why he's going to be great as a broadcaster when he retires. And now Draymond Green saying, so it was me. He's responding to the stories as if to say, where was I wrong? I got fined. What's going to happen to Robert Sarver? That's the difficult part. With Donald Sterling, the league wanted him out for years. They really did. And this was enough of a reason back in 2014 to say, well, he's got to go, because
they had him dead to rights.
They had him dead to rights, right? They don't have this guy dead to rights because, again, it's third party, it's whoever. Players can all say it and we can all believe it, but unfortunately, and that stinks, that in this society you have to have that proof.
Right. I believe the court of law would call it hearsay, right? Isn't that what it would be?
Exactly. Yeah. But the court of law can convict on stuff like that. Circumstantial evidence. Absolutely. If it all fits, it's almost like the replay rule in football. Like you don't see it, but you piece it together and you come up with, well, the ball didn't cross the goal line, so it's not a touchdown. So this guy obviously doesn't have a sterling, no pun intended, doesn't have a sterling reputation, right? I mean, he's always been considered cheap. He hasn't even extended DeAndre Ayton. That's kind of a done deal, right? When a player kind of shows that he's getting better every year, that you just extend him, when he hasn't extended DeAndre Ayton. And I think that's hurt the team. They're off to a slow start. He did pay Chris Paul. It's a mess, and it's a good market. It is. I mean, Phoenix is a top 10 market.
Oh yeah.
TV, they've got a pretty vibrant fan base. I think players like to play there. The weather's
Warm.
great. Yeah. So now you've got an owner that really players will still go if they're paid, but I think there'll be enough. There's enough options for NBA players that they don't have to do that. The NFL is different. If Daniel Snyder offers you the best deal as a football player, even though he is the biggest piece of crap out there, you may still go to Washington because they're paying you more and the contracts aren't guaranteed. So whenever you can get your money, you get your money. In the NBA, there's other options. A player can be a free agent and say, I'm not going to Phoenix. I'll look at the other 29 teams because there'll be players that are
the NFL has players over a barrel. That's I mean, that's been apparent for a long time.
Absolutely. So that's the difference between the two leagues. I mean, they're the extremes. So yeah, I don't know where we can go from here with this story, because now it's going to have to be if they can uncover him saying this to someone, or again with Sterling, he was secretly recorded, which that's a whole other issue. I'm not a big fan of that, because there's got to be some issues with that, that you can't just record people without them knowing it. And it just, look, Donald Sterling had to go. He was a terrible owner. This guy's a terrible owner. And again, it comes down to the fellow owners. Are they going to push Adam Silver to say, we need this guy out of the league? Because again, it's 80% black and we've got this guy spewing racist comments, using the N-word in full. That's not good in any league, especially the NBA.
Right. And of course he's, his attorneys are denying it. He said the word once in his life, which, seems hard to believe, but that's what he's saying. But again, without a recording or proof, it's hard to force him to give up the team. Now, at the rate teams are going for, he'd probably make over $1 billion profit from what he paid for it initially. So, I mean, that's a nice carrot to offer. But, I think, again, this is when you own a franchise, a sports franchise, you are in a massive position of power. And it's hard to give that up, even for money. I mean, these guys, more than money, I think, crave power. And the power that he wields as owner of the Phoenix Suns and the Phoenix Mercury, the WNBA team, is immense. And he's clearly used it, not for good, but for evil, it seems like. But it's hard to, even if it's $1 billion profit you're talking about, I think it's hard to convince him to sell the team. But Sap, I want to get into just a couple of the specific, more explosive claims, just in case our listeners haven't had the chance or don't want to spend an hour reading this article, just so they have some sort of more context on what exactly we're talking about. So I'm just going to read a couple of quotes, Sap, and you can sort of react as we go, if that works.
Sure.
All right. So again, this was from Baxter Holmes, who interviewed, I believe it was over 70 sources within the Suns organization, which is, I mean, that's outstanding. That's not just writing an article to write an article. That's talking to a lot of people. Here's among the claims right now. I'm going to read it directly. A black basketball operative staffer told ESPN that he's heard Sarver say the N-word multiple times. Sarver once used the N-word when trying to explain to a staffer why he preferred hiring Lindsey Hunter over Dan Marley as head coach in 2013. According to a high-level executive who heard the remark, Hunter was a first-year Suns development coordinator while Marley was in his fifth year as a Suns associate head coach. Quote, "These N-words need an N-word," Sarver told the staffer of his largely black team, according to the executive. Through legal representation, Sarver denied the allegation about Hunter, saying he never used the N-word and never uses words to that effect. So that's one of the first examples of him using the N-word. Sap, how do you react to that claim?
Well, my first reaction is I'm sure he's not the only owner that thinks that way, but he may be the only owner that actually said that. And look, we've said it before too, like, get a former player, get a player that the players can relate to. Well, what does that mean, right? I mean, look, we saw that with the Boston Red Sox when they hired Alex Kerr back before the 2018 season. They needed to find a manager who spoke to the young Latin players. But we didn't come out and say they had to go hire some derogatory term to describe Alex Kerr. We try to be politically correct. He obviously is not politically correct when he comes out with a statement like that, or not a statement, but says that to someone within the organization. So he's not the only owner that thinks that. Look, the Celtics went through this, right? They went from Brad Stevens to Ime Udoka because Ime Udoka played in the league and is also a man of color. So that's not the thing. But I don't think that, Wick Grossback told someone in the front office, we need to hire an N because these N's need an N. I just don't picture Wick Grossback doing that. You just do it because it's probably the right thing to do, and it's what should happen. But this guy obviously has no filter and really doesn't have a way to communicate correctly.
Yeah, completely agree. I mean, I assume that was the point he was trying to make. We need a player who, a guy who relates to the players, but holy crap. If you could look at every way to say that, that would be the absolute worst, most offensive way to say it. So
it sounds like something Marge Schott said when she did say this thing, when she was the owner of the Cincinnati Reds.
Like a 1,000 years old, though, Sam.
Yeah, she was, and she obviously had been around in 2016.
I'm not excusing it, but like this is a guy who's around black people.
Well, yeah, and he's only a couple of years older than me. I believe he was born in 1961. So he's 60 years old, and again, he's supporting this progressive causes, which I think sometimes can happen where the mafia don contributes a lot of money to the archdiocese because he knows that when he dies, he wants penance, so that he's going to go to heaven. That we saw that in The Godfather Part 3, right, where Michael Corleone contributed like $800 million to the Catholic Church to buy his penance. So we sometimes see people who are wealthy will make contributions to charity. First of all, it's tax deductible, but it also looks good. So that's why this guy is strange. And then politically, he's contributing to Joe Biden. But again, Democrats have as many crazy people as Republicans. Liberals have as many crazy people as conservatives. We see that. And I think people have to kind of understand that. But yeah, just him doing that and communicating that, it's just, there's a better way to do it. Like hire the person, but you don't have to go that far deep in explaining it, obviously.
Yeah, I completely agree. All right, here's another shocking claim in this article. Quote, more than a dozen employees recalled Sarver making lewd comments in all staff meetings, including discussing times when his wife would perform oral sex on him. 4 former employees said that in several all-staff meetings, Sarver claimed he needed to wear Magnum or extra-large condoms. Former employees said that he asked players about their sex lives and sexual prowess of their significant others. Through his legal team, Sarver denied talking about the sex life with employees and said he absolutely never talked about condoms. Okay, this is also, it doesn't mention it in this little thing too, but there's a part of the larger article that talks about Sarver handing around a picture of his wife in a son's bikini. Sap, I'll just turn this over to you and then I'll react to it.
My reaction to this is this guy, acts like a child, right? I mean, and he probably has small man syndrome, Napoleonic complex. I mean, he's around the players, obviously, are huge guys. Maybe this guy has penis envy. I don't know. I mean, there's sometimes when you talk about that, your exploits, that means that you fall short in that area.
Right. No one who has is confidence in their penis talks about.
Have to let you know about it. No, right. John Holmes didn't need to talk about it, or Milton Berle, or anyone else that was legendarily, well endowed below the waist, shall we say, has to really talk about it because they're confident. It's usually the person that's not that has to bring that up. So probably, I don't know what sizes he's talking about. He's talking about a Magnum condom, whatever the opposite is of a Magnum, is a minimum condom or a thimble. I don't know what he probably really does use. I mean, obviously the guy's got some issues, and the thing is, I know his father was a wealthy guy, and he died when Sarver, I believe, was 18, and then they contributed a lot of money for heart research because the dad died of heart disease, and they, the hospitals in the area, the Sarver Hospital, does, I guess, great work when it comes to, trying to cure heart disease, whatever the case may be. We kind of saw this with Tom Yawkey, right? In our hometown of Boston, where he gave a lot of money to Dana-Farber, and a lot of people's lives have been impacted by that. That's great. But then you look and see that he was obviously, a racist. Sometimes you've got to be, look, if I'm a cancer patient and I'm in the Dana-Farber and I'm surviving because of the money he gave, at that point I can suspend any kind of problems with him and say, well, I mean, I know the guy was obviously a piece of crap, but because of his money, I'm alive. And look, so many wealthy people in this country have made billions off of, the backs of the poor. And look, if you're in the tobacco industry, you've killed people, so
Sure.
I get all of that. So that's what's kind of odd about this guy. This is why he's kind of like a walking contradiction.
Well, Seth, I hate this happens all the time where somebody does a good thing or does charity and people equate that to being a good person.
Right.
Doing a good deed doesn't make you a good person. Those are two separate entities. You can be praised for doing a good deed, but that doesn't qualify you as being a good person. And you see this in any sort of walk of life, politicians, athletes, actors, what have you. If somebody gives to charity for some reason, people think that exempts them from criticism. It's a very strange thing in society. And the most recent example I can think of it, besides this one with Sarver's, with the Kyrie Irving thing, he's being a douche about the anti-vax and all this sort of stuff. And, all the other things he says that are idiotic. And people will go, well, you don't understand how much work he does for charity. Well, those have nothing to do with each other. Those are completely separate things.
Yeah. I mean, it's like the neighbor who gets carted away by the police, who we find out has like 12 dead bodies in his basement. They go, he coached the Little League team. Like, okay, that's great. Hopefully none of the Little Leaguers are among the 12 that we found dead in his basement.
Jerry Sandusky did camps for kids all the time.
Stuff, right. And then we find out the horrors that he inflicted on so many people. So yeah, again, I think people are trying to buy penance. Like the mafia would contribute money to the archdiocese. They'd go to church every day.
No, I think you're dead on.
There was some guilt there, or that's what happens. You give money to help animals or whatever the charitable cause you decide to pick, and you think that absolves you of your wrongdoings, and it doesn't. Yeah, I mean, it's because in society we should be able to walk and chew gum at the same time. Like, we can say, okay, that's all well and good, but this person's also done a lot of stupid things.
Right. Like my favorite one, Sap, I think is what Trump didn't take a salary when he was president. And for some reason, people said that felt that absolved him from any bad or poor decision he made, or said, well, he's not taking any money for being president. Okay, great. What does that have to do?
Yeah. You know what? I'll make a deal.
So he can call countries shithole countries, but he's not taking any money for president. So,
I'll tell you what, be a better president, we'll pay you double. How's that sound? Instead of 400,000 a year, we'll give you 800,000 a year. Don't get me started on that. I wrote a column at the Herald that to really try to get better people to run for office, we've got to give them much more money, like make it $25 million a year, and they can serve 2 terms. And at the end of those 2 terms, they can't write a book, and they get a stipend of $5 million a year. Like, we got plenty of money. We're so far in debt though, but that's the way it should be. How do you become president? And then you make more money after you become president, because you sit on the board of all these companies that you help while you're president. You write a book, you want to be president. Well, you're going to have to give up a lot while you're president, and also while you're an ex-president or former president, and make it better. But that's kind of a long-winded way to respond. You're right. I mean, just because I didn't take a salary, well, what's that mean?
Right. No, exactly. Sap, the thing about the passing the picture of the wife in the bikini,
that's
and his
strange.
Excuse for that was, well, we just got a contract with an apparel company, and I wanted to show people how it looked and see if we wanted to go through with the order. That does not hold a lot of water. That excuse for me.
My dog ate my homework.
Man, that is a weird thing to do. A very weird thing to do. Show around people. Presumably, I would say the Suns. How many people do you think the Suns employ? Sap, over 200, 300?
Oh, at least. Yeah, these companies.
At least.
Yeah, I would say, well,
you would know better than me. I'm curious.
Well, like there's full-time and there's part-time, there's game day staff and all that stuff. So probably around 500. I think I read a story once the Lakers employ 570 people, but that could be part of the game day staff. Although from what I understand, like even at TD Garden, there's several hundred ushers, which they're part-time employees of the Garden, not the Celtics. But I would say in that, right? Well, look,
Okay,
go
so
with
let's conservatively say
let's say 500 or whatever,
for the Suns. For the Suns, very conservative. Let's say 200.
Yeah,
there's no way he knows all those people. He's showing all of them a picture of his wife in a bikini.
Right. Yeah, that's
like what is wrong with you? That's
I mean, that's there's something wrong with him. I mean, at least Rex Ryan talked about, being attracted to his wife's feet, which that was strange enough, but that's fine. That's kind of a funny moment.
But that wasn't in like an office setting, right? Wasn't that
no,
a TMZ thing?
I think so. Yeah, more of that than an office setting where, look, you're the assistant director of public relations. You really don't have a lot of interaction with the owner, and he's passing around a picture of his wife in a bikini. Well, what is your reaction to that? Like, what do you possibly say? You're like, okay, if I say she's hot, you may get fired. He may punch you. What are you supposed to say? Or she doesn't look good in it. Well, you're getting fired. I mean, his excuse for that is right up there with, if you've been vaccinated, yes, I'm immunized.
Right.
It's about the same thing as Aaron Rodgers saying that. I'm going to just continue to shit on my favorite quarterback.
I really wanted to know
I am pissed at him.
I really wanted to know what people thought about the material of the bikini. Can we sell this in the store? That was all it was. You wouldn't hire a model or like a mannequin. God forbid you do that or show people examples. You got to show pictures. The only way to get that point across is to show people a picture of your wife in the bikini. I'm sure that was
Mr.
exactly
Dolce,
what he was thinking.
Yeah, apparently he thinks he's Dolce and Gabbana or one of the fashion icons of the world, and Hugo Boss.
Bizarre,
the guy
bizarre
issues without question. And again, rich people do strange things because they've got a lot of money. They've never told no. And they just figure they can buy their way out of anything, right? You just write a check, here it is. No issues.
Yeah. And this last part, Sap, I think is it's not the most necessarily damning. Saying the N-word as a white person is pretty damning, but this about just the culture that's permeated throughout the Suns. And I think through a lot of NBA teams, but this article is obviously specifically focusing about the Suns under Robert Sarver's tenure, about the misogyny going on and how women are treated in the office space. So here's again from Baxter Holmes' article. A number of employees, especially women, described to ESPN being subjected to or witnessing verbal barrages from their male executives. I think as a woman, when we come into sports, unfortunately, we're resigned to the fact that we'll be sexually harassed at some point, the female former marketing employee said. But the part that was the worst for me is the verbal abuse and feeling like I wasn't human. These public examples of mistreatment and disregard were a constant source of concern for many women throughout the organization. Female employees reported inappropriate comments by managers, according to multiple former employees. One female former sales employee and a former Suns vice president who appeared intoxicated. One former sales employee said a former Suns vice president appeared intoxicated, asked her how many members of her department she'd slept with, and about a specific coworker's penis. It was terrible because I had not had sexual interactions with anybody on the staff, so that was very weird, she told ESPN. And also, it made me uncomfortable because my VP is asking me about my sexual history with other coworkers. That kind of thing was almost normal. When contacted for comment, the executive said such questions were never raised with any employee.
Yeah, I mean, what exactly is human resources doing? The only problem with that is when you generally have these issues with an underling and the superior, they generally will side with the superior unless they want that superior out because the salary is bloated and they're trying to move on from that person. Forget about going to human resources if you have an issue with ownership or upper management. You're not going to win with that because who pays?
Which was talked about extensively in this article too.
In any business, I've always felt that human resources should be paid half by the owner and half by the employees. So if, especially at a big company, say there's 500 employees and you have 4 people working in human resources, or whatever the number may be, that part of their salary should come from the workers. Now, it shouldn't, in theory, as I've said before, you love my saying of what should be and what is are two totally different things. It shouldn't be that. It should be that, but it isn't, because again, if I'm an employee, go, why am I paying into human resources? There's supposed to be some sort of fair group here, and they're not, because if there's any issue, they're going to side with the owner. How do you go into human resources and complain about Robert Sarver? He pays the people in human resources. Like,
Right.
that's talk about fighting City Hall. There's no way in hell you're going to win that one. So you remain silent. You take this abuse, and at some point you crack. And that's why what Baxter Holmes is doing with the story is very commendable. I just don't see the thing I don't understand. I know that person talked about being in, professional sports, that it's male dominated, but there are businesses that are male dominated, I would think, right? Like, let's use, Hanes, right? I mean, Hanes makes underwear and t-shirts and socks for men, but I'm sure there are a lot of women that work at Hanes that have very important positions that don't feel that way, that the similar people in sports teams have. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah, no, I think
you know what I'm
this
saying,
is
or
a
vice
sports.
versa.
I think it's
It's
not
a sports
only
problem.
sports, but it is a problem.
Well,
I would venture to guess with every sports franchise, professional
there's
sports
issues.
franchise.
Of course there are. And then I mean,
Well,
but there's
Seth,
also,
we heard it last year. Remember with the Mavericks, this was an issue.
right. Yeah, exactly.
And
yeah, exactly.
and they've had they shuffled the deck chairs there, and now they are claiming everything's fine. I highly doubt that, but I mean,
yeah, they hired Jason Kidd, who struck his wife on many
he's
occasions.
a great guy.
So yeah, I mean, that makes no sense whatsoever. But conversely, like, so if there's guys working in a predominantly female business, are guys being sexually accosted? I doubt it. Or maybe they like it, but you know what I'm saying? Like in a WNBA franchise, which is about women, if I'm John Sapichetti working as the public relations director for pick a WNBA team, I mean, am I supposed to feel uncomfortable? I'm sure I would feel very comfortable with it.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's an issue, and you and I both know a lot of women who work in sports, and you hear
Sure.
horror stories from them. I don't think there's a single woman who's worked either covering sports or for a team that hasn't been subject to some sort of sexual harassment or lewd comments, and that just shouldn't be the case. And obviously, if you're the owner of the team, and which Robert Sarver is, the buck stops with you, and he's created this sort of culture of it being okay to sexualize people or be misogynistic or say sexual things or say the N-word. I mean, you follow the leader, right? So if he's saying this sort of stuff, why wouldn't you?
There's an old Italian saying, I'm sure every culture has this: the fish stinks from the head down. So if he's setting that tone, then if you're an immediate underling to him, you're like, my boss does it, so it's fine for me. So I'm a VP or I'm the head of a department, so I can act this way as well. So I've got carte blanche because the owner is a complete idiot. This is what we've heard about what happened in Washington with the Washington football team. The thing is, that league is not going to release that information. And John Gruden, who I don't care for, never have as a coach or an analyst. And what we found out from his emails that were leaked is obviously makes Robert Sarver look like a priest. But he's the one who gets the biggest fallout, not anybody to do with the Washington football team. And we're not going to find out about that because the league will not allow it unless obviously the Washington Post, New York Times, whatever, gets a hold of this and really pushes forward on this. The league's not going to release it, but they gladly released the Wells report about deflated footballs or the bullying that took place in Miami with Richie Incognito. They'll put out, hit pieces on that, let it for public consumption, but they won't with this Washington football team. Again, Roger Goodell makes $64 million a year, which comes to $2 million per team to protect those owners. Whereas I think Adam Silver has a little bit more flexibility, and he can go to fellow owners and, maybe say, what should we do here with Phoenix? Although, who's the highest profile owner in the NBA? I mean, it can't be Mark Cuban because he's constantly fought with the commissioner's office. I mean, I think he's probably the most well-known.
Yeah, he's most well-known,
but the most prominent. Like in the NFL, you have, Jerry Jones and Robert Kraft are the most powerful owners. Then you've got the Mara family, the Rooney family, right there, like the establishment, right?
Probably Jeannie Buss.
I would think so. Yeah, that probably makes the most sense. I mean, the Busses have owned the Lakers for over 40 years. Her dad was so well respected. I mean, I would say that it's certainly not James Dolan, who owns the most valuable franchise in the league, right? It's not
I don't think
Warriors
any of the other
owners,
owners take him seriously. So
no, they don't.
I
He's
think
a
that's the
clown,
problem.
right? Yeah, I mean, they kind of look at him almost as if Robert Irsay in Jim Irsay with the
Yeah.
Colts, or with Mark Davis in Las Vegas, Al Davis's son, who obviously is
Yeah. No, they look
off
at him as
the
like
wall
a boob.
clown, right? Yeah. Whereas, I mean, I think I would say I don't know who the most prominent owner is in the NBA. The guy who, like, I don't even know who it is. That's actually a really good question. Like, who could the commissioner go to and say, you've got to broker this and you've got to back me on this? It can't be the owner of the Clippers, right? I mean, he's
Palmer, Mickey Aronson, maybe,
yeah.
But there's nobody like Robert Kraft or
Jerry Jones
or Jerry Jones in the NBA.
Or the Mara family.
I mean, the most famous owner is obviously Michael Jordan, but I don't know how much I don't know how much power he has as an actual owner. He owns a small market team that's never been good.
Shouldn't he, as the only black owner in the league, step up though? I mean,
yeah, but he's never done that.
He's never stepped up on anything, right? I mean, I know he's contributed since George Floyd, and he can contribute more money than anyone because the man is worth, I think, $3 billion. Does he even go to games anymore? Like, I was watching Celtics Charlotte. I don't even know if he goes to games. I mean, he's really he just golfs and gambles, which is what he likes to do. And you know what? God bless him. Go at it, MJ. But I mean, he's a black owner in the league.
If the players are expecting Adam Silver to do something about this, there's really not much he can do. That's sort of the problem, right? I mean, and this goes to show this article also says, I'll read a quick quote for you, Sap. It says, within the first decade of Sarver's tenure, a few members of the approximately 20-person ownership group explored having Sarver removed. According to people with knowledge of the inquiry, the operating agreement that sealed Sarver's position as team's governor was quietly reviewed by outside legal counsel, but the counsel soon relayed that Sarver's contract effectively prevented him from being removed absent serious criminal behavior or similarly egregious conduct. So that indicates to me that if he doesn't want to sell the team, he's not selling the team. I don't think there's anything that Adam Silver or Michael Jordan or Mickey Aronson or Jeannie Buss could do about a damn thing about it.
Yeah. And then, I can't think of it. I'm almost speechless, which surprises me.
I mean, they could fine him. They could dock him picks if they want to. It would be hard to do that for cause, though, because they don't have any proof. Unfortunately.
Right. Yeah. You need to have this on audio or video. I know it's probably great reporting. I'm sure it is great reporting by Baxter Holmes, and I believe it, but it's just he said, she said, and unless they have irrefutable evidence, then he's going to probably skate on this, and it may ruin the franchise at some point. But look, even the worst franchise in the NBA is worth over $1 billion, and he paid $400 million for it. I know he's put a lot of money. He's a strange guy. Like, he's cheap, but then he spent like $300 million on the arena and built like a really nice practice facility. He's like a weird, I don't know. He's just a strange guy, to say the least.
Yeah. I think that, the only thing to me, because it seems like Baxter Holmes did so much research and stuff on this. I don't think there's going to be any more bombshells that come out unless someone reads this and says, I really now feel like I'm incentivized to come forward. I feel like all these bombs have come out in this article because it was so long. And so I don't expect there to be any sort of further audio or video, anything. So the only thing to me that would have Robert Sarver now sell the team is him being, so embarrassed by this that he just wants to get out of the public spotlight. Nothing we know about him seems to indicate to me that would happen or is a likely scenario.
No, he seems to enjoy the spotlight, right? I mean, he's kind of courtside, kind of a crazy guy. Vince Carter was talking about that. He's very fiery and he's confrontational. I think he was going at it with LeBron James. Like, my message to owners is don't fight with players. Like, that's what, I don't even think fans should do that. Like, I still haven't understood people getting into fights with fans other than they just need the attention and just want to be famous for 15 minutes. But sit in your seats. The NFL does it right. At least they've got an owner's box that's off the field, so they can do whatever they want. And they're not, although Jerry Jones sometimes comes to the sideline late in games,
Well,
But
he's a
that's
coach,
different than
too,
courtside.
you know?
Well, he has actually the general manager. I mean, that's his actual title. And look, he's not bad at it. I mean, he's assembled a lot of talent over the years. Just can't seem to put it all together. But with the NBA owners, they're courtside. I mean, they're right there.
Yeah.
And my message is just don't get into fights with opposing players. First of all, it's not good for your brand. Like if you're trying to recruit players as free agents, they're going to right now. I'm sure every potential free agent is like, I'm not going to Phoenix. I can go somewhere else and make just as much money. I mean, here's the thing: when that happened with the Clippers 7 years ago, Doc Rivers was the coach and Chris Paul was the star player. Doc Rivers spoke out, right?
Yeah.
I mean, as a black head coach, Chris Paul's a leader among all players. He's no longer the president of the Players Association, but I think he still carries a lot of weight in the league as a seasoned veteran who's a leader. Like at this point with Phoenix, maybe Chris Paul can speak out. Maybe
Monty Williams.
Monty Williams, who's extremely well respected, can speak out. But again, it's a little different than the Clippers situation because there was audio of Donald Sterling. There's nothing of Sarver unless someone has it and comes forward with it. Then it's all going to be denial.
Right. So they could be upset with this situation, and they probably are today. Very, very upset about this. But
you can't demand.
I don't know what they can do about it.
No, it's different than Donald Sterling. It really is. Because again, if someone has audio of Robert Sarver saying things, then it'll come forward and
then he's toast.
Yeah, then he's toast. Unless if he thinks that's out there, then maybe sells it sooner. So that look, Donald Sterling sold the Clippers for $2 billion.
Right.
A team that's never made it to the NBA Finals. Now he's in the LA market, which is enhances the value of a franchise.
And had a very motivated buyer.
Oh God. I mean, I want Steve Ballmer buying something I'm selling because the man is worth $80 billion. So $2 billion. Yeah. Here's the check. Give me the keys to the kingdom. Again, he's paid $400 million for it. I would assume the Suns are worth $1.5 billion. So if he sold it, he'd make $1 billion in profit. Not bad for screwing up, right? I mean, that's
like, your punishment, essentially, right?
Right. You get to make $1 billion.
1.55 is what Bloomberg.
Okay, so essentially $1 billion profit. I mean, and again, he built a whole practice facility in the arena, whatever. So
people have been overpaying for these franchises. So there's a chance it could go for more than that. I think these estimates are on the conservative side. So I mean his punishment would be okay. He makes $1 billion. Not a bad day at the office, But again, Sap, the only thing really at this point, short of video or audio, to get him to sell the team is you're relying on him doing the right thing and being embarrassed. In which, if you're passing around a picture of your wife in a bikini and talking about how you need to wear Magnum condoms, you're not a guy who's embarrassed very easily. No. So I don't think he's embarrassed.
No, he's right out of Animal House. He's not. And these guys generally never think they're wrong. To get to the point they're at, you have to be wired differently to be a billionaire. I mean, now he was given a head start because his dad was wealthy, passed away, left him quite a bit, and he expanded that. Not like he's a self-made man, but he did take a fair amount of wealth and made it bigger. To get to that point, you're just not like normal people. You're just not. You're just wired differently. And I don't think he's embarrassed. Like you said, if you're passing a picture around of your wife in a bikini, you don't really have much shame.
Any shame? No, he has no shame. Definitely not. I think that's a big takeaway you can get from this article. He has no shame. I mean, he's going around. This article talks about he's going around asking different employees, "Are you one of mine? Do I own you?" I mean, that's Jesus Christ. Yeah. I mean, but that's how he thinks. And that's a perfect example of how he thinks, Sap. So I don't know what the fallout is going to be from this. My guess is that people are going to talk about this for a while. People know that he's been a crappy person to work for. It's going to be even more reinforced that he's a crappy person to work for, and he's going to still hold on to the team. Unless the NBA, if Adam Silver really wants to get rid of him, the best way to do it is to find somebody that will pay an insane amount for the team, double what the value is. I mean, because that's hard to turn down. But I mean, short of that, I just don't see any path for the Suns players who I'm sure hate the guy, or any of the other, owners who I'm sure all hate the guy to get rid of him. With Donald Sterling, again, as we mentioned, Sap, once they had him on tape, he was done. There was no way in hell the NBA was going to let him continue to own that team. It was just not going to happen. Players just weren't going to play outright for him.
Yeah,
so they needed to move quickly to do it. This, and I'm, in reading the recap of the article on NBC, the writer Dan Feldman, who I think did the recap, makes a good point that he says, there's a strong case to be made that more than him being a racist or a sexist, which he very well may be, he's just a terrible person to work for, which in and of itself isn't a good thing, but it's not really an offense enough to get you to sell the team.
Yeah, I mean, if that were the case, then most of the owners would have had to sell at some point. I don't think George Steinbrenner was the easiest guy to work for.
No,
so at that point, he would have been forced to sell. And look, George Steinbrenner served a 2-year suspension back in the 70s, and then served another suspension. So
yeah, you think Jerry Jones is easy to work for?
Oh, well, he might be fun to work for, though. I think he might be fun to work for. I mean, he seems to be patient with his coaches, which is kind of a surprise. I mean, Jason Garrett was there for 8 years, and every year was going 8-8. Now he's got Mike McDonald's coaching him, and I think that that they've got a really good team. But I don't think Mike McDonald's. You didn't catch my my joke there.
No,
it's Mike McCarthy, but I call him Mike McDonald's because he's about 300.
You used to call him a traffic cop from Wisconsin.
Pittsburgh. Yeah, from Pittsburgh. He looked like a lieutenant in the Milwaukee Police Department. He's just big, heavy. I swear I went to high school with 18 guys that looked like Mike McCarthy. Or he looks like he should be the DPW guy. And again, this is my love for Aaron Rodgers, although that's waning. My love for Aaron Rodgers to show that now that he's got a competent coach, he's winning more often. Although in life, he's not doing so well.
No, the last thing I want to say about this article before we finish up talking about Aaron Rodgers, because I'm desperate to talk about him. I mean, I'm my hands are shaking. I want to talk about him so much. The one part, I said this earlier, that I am a little bit hesitant to believe. I mean, I still believe bits and pieces of him, is the Earl Watson part at the beginning. I'm going to explain why. Earl Watson did a very bad job as the head coach of the Suns. That's just a fact. You can look at his record. He didn't last long. He didn't do a good job. He didn't even develop players there. He has every reason to try to bury Robert Sarver in the organization because it makes him look better. He hasn't been able to find another head coaching job since. So I look at the source specifically with him and say, and also the fact that no one was able to back up any of his claims. He said he was the only person in the room. Those two things combined make me at least raise my eyebrows a little.
Right.
I again, I had to look at both sides of the story. I fully believe most of this report. I fully believe that Robert Sarver, does racist things and sexist things. But the story specifically where Earl Watson made me raise my eyebrows just a little bit because of where it's coming from and what position Watson is in now versus when he was with the team. I think a lot of these other people have no real reason to, bury Robert Sarver outside of the fact that he's been terrible to them. For Earl Watson, I think there might be a little bit of something behind it. He knew that this article was coming out, and it was a good opportunity for him to maybe look a little less crappy as the head coach of the Suns.
Right.
Just my opinion. I could be completely wrong.
Yeah, he may have piled on, and again, he hasn't resurfaced. And all of the stories he's talking about, there were no other people there. So I mean, I could come out and say, yeah, Jet and I went out to lunch, and he called me 19 different things, and like at that point, so no one else heard it. So it's you versus him. So we'll see what happens. Although I would assume maybe some of the things that Earl Watson had to say were true because it does seem to fit the pattern of Robert Sarver. So that may be the case. I mean, Earl Watson,
this could be 100% true. I'm not discounting that could be the case.
There's some skepticism with Earl Watson because of other things. And again, he was dating. I think he was engaged to Joy Taylor, who was Colin Cowherd's co-host on Fox Sports 1. And how stupid can you be not to continue to, stay with Joy Taylor?
And they're both Earl Watson and Joy Taylor are extremely religious, which, always gets my cackles up a little bit.
Are they?
Not
Joy Taylor's religious?
I'm pretty sure she is. I know Earl Watson is.
Yeah, I know he is. Yeah.
but that's
She never says that on the air, though. I never
neither
hear
here
that.
nor there.
Yeah.
That's
Okay.
just my opinion on it.
Well, you're an atheist, so everybody's religious to
Right.
you.
Yeah. So, that's the one thing I'll say. Okay, I'm a little skeptical about. Could completely still be true. There was some interesting things. People here who did have Robert Sarver's back, though. Sap, their current general manager, former teammate of LeBron James, James Jones, who is black, had nothing but nice things to say about him. Steve Kerr, we all know, is a very, very outspoken liberal in support of BLM and all that stuff. Said none of that ever happened when he was there. So I mean, it's not like he had nobody defending him. It just seemed like the overwhelming amount of people that Baxter Holmes talked to did not have anything good to say about him.
Well, in the case of James Jones, he's only been there a short period of time. I think it's 2 years that he's been there.
Right.
So maybe he wasn't exposed.
And is
to
currently, getting his checks signed by him.
Right. And I think James Jones would find a job elsewhere in about 5 seconds. I mean, he did a great job putting that team together. Yes. Steve Kerr, this was years ago that he had his dealings with Robert Sarver. And maybe Sarver knew, well, I can't really say these things in front of these guys. This is a bit too much. Like he's saying it in front of middle management or people that no one knows, right? So that he's doing that rather than he's not gonna say these things in front of Chris Paul or Devin Booker.
Unless he's really got
unless he's insane,
loose, like it just completely insane.
I mean, Lord knows what.
Unlike Donald Sterling, who was doing that.
Oh yeah, Donald Sterling. Yeah, that was just. I mean, Donald Sterling being Donald Sterling.
He was walking in the locker room and dropping N-bombs. I mean, like that guy was out of his mind.
Oh yeah, I mean he takes the cake as being the worst owner in sports history. Seriously, I mean, it was not just because of that, because of everything that led up to that. It was a joke of an organization. He just, I mean, it was kind of like a slum owner. I mean, just made his money. I mean, look, again, billionaires tend to make their money off the backs of the poor or the middle income and take advantage of them. I mean, Robert Sarver owned banks, and we know how banks,
they're great.
Fines and they're all great to deal with. I mean, if someone makes, and how can you make a fortune off of coming up with some sort of cure? Because now you got to charge everybody a ton of money for it to make that fortune. You know what I'm saying? So to make a fortune, I think sometimes the people I like are the people that make it through entertainment or like, if you own like hotels, restaurants, at least people when they go to your place are having a good time. And if you treat your employees right, I enjoy that. Or for instance,
you don't want the guy who runs the insurance company.
Right? Yeah, I was just hoping to like screw everybody. Like Market Basket, the local chain here is owned by RDT, who you remember 7 years ago. The employees went on strike for him, which is like the most ridiculous thing. And I got to meet him a couple of years ago. One of the nicest men I've ever met, and spoke with me for like 15 minutes, wanted to find out about me. I have friends of the family who worked at Market Basket for years. He knew who they were, could tell you like where they lived. And all of his employees, when I was in this particular Market Basket, were coming up and hugging the guy. They love them. I mean, so that's the environment you want. And he's making his living off of groceries, and they're the cheapest place to go. So that's pretty cool. I think he sleeps well at night. He's made a lot of money, but he's employed a lot of people, taking care of them, and we as the consumers have benefited from him. That's the perfect situation to be in. I mean, there's other billionaires who maybe they don't sleep so well at night, although most of them have such an ego that they do. But
again, they don't think they do anything wrong.
They don't think they do anything wrong.
That's the whole point, right? I mean, he's saying the N-word to people and saying, what? That's fine. I can do that.
I can do that. I'm rich.
He's going into the locker room, Sap, and drawing up plays, according to this article. One of which was setting a pick and roll inside the paint, which is a 3-second violation. I mean, he's saying use this play. Another time he was saying that you made no adjustments on Jonas Valanciunas. The assistant coach said, well, we did this, that, and the other thing. And he stormed out and saying, no adjustments. So, seems
like a reasonable man. Well, remember,
what's talking about?
What's the movie that you love? I thought it was a good movie. You thought it was a great movie when, it was, remember the actor? It was kind of a horror movie, but it was kind of a dark horror movie. And the father in it says, I'm not racist. I voted for Obama twice.
Oh yeah. Get Out.
Get Out. Okay, exactly. Yeah. So that's kind of like what this guy is. I'm not a racist. I, contributed to progressive causes, police reform, and I opposed SB 1070. So I can't possibly be racist. Well, two things can be true at the same time.
Right. You don't write it. You don't get to say the N-word because you posed some,
Right.
bill. It's not a transaction that you make. That's not a thing.
No,
it's not, you don't
exactly.
get a card to say it. It's not
No.
Yeah. The ego on Sarver must be just insane. But yeah, I mean, it's really, I encourage everybody to go and read the article. It's on ESPN. You don't have to pay for it or anything. It's a free article. It's long, but every paragraph is interesting. And if you want to know more about all these claims, including some other funny details about Sarver trying to meddle inside the actual basketball operations, that to me is comical. The other stuff is alarming, but the basketball stuff is funny because
they could have used him in the finals last year. They should have put, they should have built a wall against.
No adjustments.
Giannis. That was the adjustment they had to make. So maybe he would have been onto something there.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe. But yeah, we'll see if there's any more fallout from this. I'm sure Chris Paul, Devin Booker, DeAndre, and some players on the Suns will have something to say about this. Monty Williams, I'm sure, will have something to say about this, and we'll definitely react to that as that comes out. But Sap, before we finish the show, I need to know your thoughts on Aaron Rodgers and this vaccine, no vaccine controversy. The reason we're allowed to do it on this show is because he is a part owner of the Milwaukee Bucks. So now it is an NBA story.
Even if he wasn't an owner of the Milwaukee Bucks, we could talk about it on this show. He's my favorite quarterback, my favorite football player of all time. I like his quirkiness, that he seems to be a prick and seems to be comfortable with that.
Oh, he's a prick.
I think he's a really smart guy. He's a smart guy. He's a Cal guy, which, Jaylen Brown's a Cal guy. I think they think they're the smartest guys in the room, kind of like the Duke guys. I'm pissed at him right now because not just how it's going to impact the Packers. That's micro. That's not a real big thing. Jordan Love will start Sunday against the Chiefs. There's a chance that Rodgers could come back to face Seattle the next week. If he had been vaccinated, he could have possibly played this Sunday against the Chiefs because, he'd have to get 2 negative tests without being symptomatic. And that can happen in a 5-day period.
Or, he just wouldn't have gotten COVID if he was
may
vaccinated.
Not have gotten COVID, right. He was vaccinated. Now, I go back, I remember, because I watch all the Packers stuff and his press conferences, which I think are great because he's, free-flowing. He's a smart guy, articulate, not afraid to say things. But he was asked directly, have you been vaccinated? He goes, yeah. I'm immunized, which is not the same as being vaccinated or inoculated. There's different words you use.
Right. And at the time, I remember talking to you about it, and you thought it was funny because he's correcting the term.
Well, because he's the smartest guy.
That's what it seemed like he was doing.
It seemed like to me he's being himself, and everybody else got vaccinated. I got immunized, and he's trying to sell it as the same thing. So he blatantly lied to people. Now he took these homeopathic drugs or whatever through his crazy fiance.
She's crazy. Oh, she's crazy. Yeah.
Makes Alex Guerrero look normal, right? I mean, she
eats clay.
She eats clay. She doesn't shower. She's made her own lotions. She goes out and spreads her legs in the sun for vitamin D. She claims that that's healthy. She's obviously off the wall, very earthy, crunchy, and he's kind of followed suit. Aaron looks like he doesn't shower anymore. It looks like he lives in a van, like he looks homeless. And so he lied. That's all you could say is he lied.
Absolutely.
And then he petitioned to the NFL and the NFLPA to say, well, because I went to my own private doctor, witch doctor or whatever, maybe it was his fiance who came up with some concoction that says this will take care of it. Kind of like Alex Guerrero with concussion water, and they denied him. And again, the NFLPA and the NFL negotiated the rules, and he's big in the union, so follow the rules. So he doesn't get vaccinated. He says he's immunized, which is not the same thing. My problem with this is, and look, with Cole Beasley and DeAndre Hopkins and Carson Wentz, they're not vaccinated. I have more respect for them because at least they're out front with it. Like they're
in a strange way, I have more respect for Kyrie Irving.
I do. Yeah, Kyrie Irving is, but because Aaron Rodgers is like trying to sell us that he was vaccinated when he wasn't. Then he didn't. Okay, so that's fine. If you just come out and say I'm not vaccinated, but you got to follow the protocols. So you got to wear masks. in the building. Also, here's the part that really pisses me off. With press conferences, if you're vaccinated, you can appear maskless in front of the media, the press conference, which he does every week or twice a week after the game and on Wednesdays. If you're not vaccinated, you have to do them via Zoom or with a mask. He did neither. He put these people who make a very moderate living, reporters for the Green Bay Post-Gazette or the Milwaukee Journal or whatever, Packer Wire website, in peril by sitting in the same room with them, maybe 6 feet away for 45 minutes while he's pontificating about how smart he is, and he put them in danger. So if I'm a reporter for one of these organizations, I'm going to look at him and go, Aaron, you put me in harm's way. Like, I don't like that. That's human to human. I don't care that you're this great quarterback and leader of the team and you're a great quote and all of that stuff. If I'm a fellow player, I'm an offensive lineman who gets scalded because I missed a blocking assignment, I'm going to look back and say, dude, you don't have my ass. Why should I have your ass? Or
that's effed up.
It's a horrible leadership trait. He's not a leader. Again, and I will criticize my favorite players. You know that. LeBron and Aaron are my two favorite guys. I will criticize them almost like, I think parents will criticize their kids, maybe not publicly, but you want to make them better. So he's not a real leader. And look, I think physically and mentally, he's the greatest quarterback ever. But the reason that Tom Brady is a greater quarterback is because he's a leader. Tom Brady's vaccinated because he realizes that to give his team the best chance to win, he and all of his teammates should be vaccinated. So there's less of a chance they're going to miss games because of the virus, right? Aaron Rodgers doesn't give a crap about that because he's got his own answers, right? So, if I'm a wide receiver, I go across the middle, taking life and limb into my own hands, and I run the wrong route or drop the ball, and he stares at me. I'm going to say, dude, you run the route. I'm not going to be there for you. So it's terrible. It's a lack of leadership. And now we'll see what happens. He's definitely missing Sunday's game, which is the marquee game of the year, not the marquee game of the week. It's the marquee game of the year. It's Rodgers against Mahomes. Like, this is the second time in 3 years that we were supposed to have Mahomes and Rodgers. And for the second time in 3 years, we're not getting it. 2 years ago, Mahomes got hurt before the game the week before and missed it. This time, Aaron Rodgers decided to be an asshole and lie about being vaccinated, so he's out of the game. I'm sure Fox is pissed because they pay $2.5 billion a year for the rights to these games, and that was their marquee game. And now we've got Jordan Love against Patrick Mahomes. Not quite as sexy as Aaron Rodgers against Patrick Mahomes.
No, I've obviously on this show ripped Kyrie Irving a lot, and deservedly so, and he deserves to be ripped. But if you have to say something about him, the guy is honest about his stupid, dumbass opinions. Yeah. Everybody has the right to get vaccinated or not. I understand that. You have the right to do it or not. I also have the right to say you're a moron if you don't, though. Right. That's how it is. But aside from that, it's the thing that he was trying to pull a fast one on everybody. That's what I can't get over. It's just, it's in and of itself, not getting vaccinated, I think is stupid. And I'm going to rip you for that. But him thinking this whole thing where he thinks he's smarter than everybody else and then lying on top of it. He was a guy that I didn't care one way. That I didn't dislike him. I didn't love him. I thought he was fine. I enjoy watching him play football. Now I really hate the guy, Sap. I really think he's an a-hole. And I look at it almost the same as I look at Kyrie Irving, who is my least favorite athlete in sports.
In some ways, it's worse because he lied. And again, Cole Beasley, Carson Wentz.
And he lied in such a sneaky way, too.
In such a sneaky way. And you could tell, and I talked about this, and this press conference was August 26th, because, of course, I'm the only guy that watches all these press conferences. And when he was asked that question, he kind of looked down, and you could tell when people are lying, they don't really look you straight in the eye. He kind of looked down and goes, yeah, I'm immunized. And it just went from there. Now, here's the issue. There is no bigger fanboy media group than the Green Bay Packers. It's all they have in Green Bay. That's it. There's no Dan Shaughnessy or Ron Borges. They're going to call people out. They just love that team. No one followed up and said, well, what does that mean? If that had happened here and Shaughnessy or Borges or pretty much any good reporter, I mean, Dan Housley would have, still been at the press conference asking questions. They would have followed up and said, well, what does that mean? Because vaccinated and immunized are two totally different things. But no one there is going to ask him that because he gives them access. He's really good at the microphone. They love him, right? And that's all they have. That's all they have in that city is the Green Bay Packers. They did this with Brett Favre. They kissed his ass. The organization had to kiss his ass. They're doing it now with Aaron Rodgers. This is going to be it for him at the end of this year. I felt all along that he's going to move on to Denver or Cleveland or wherever he wants to go. He's still a great quarterback. So there's going to be a market for him. I mean, he's still one of the three best quarterbacks in football. Heck, I think he was a leading MVP candidate. But I think they've had enough of this. And now, in some weird way, this could be interesting for the Packers because now you get to see Jordan Love. If he goes out and plays well, then you can move on from Aaron Rodgers at the end of the season. You may not make that decision based on one game. There's other things that you have to factor in, like how he is in the meeting room, how he is in practice, how he's trending in the right direction. I mean, heck, the Jets going to move on from Zach Wilson at this point because Mike White threw for 400 yards.
Right.
His debut, probably not. Although I was talking with our boss, Ian Glendon, this morning, and here's the interesting thing. It was a Jet that knocked out Drew Bledsoe that gave the Patriots Tom Brady. It was a Patriot that knocked out Zach Wilson that may have given the Jets Mike White.
Yeah, I would like to see a second full game from Mike White before I make that comparison.
So you're saying Mike White's not Tom Brady?
I don't think so, but he did do something Tom Brady never did, which was throw for 400 yards in his first start. Only Cam Newton has done that.
I know.
So good for Mike White. But Sap, overall, okay, this is the only question I want to know now. Is he still your favorite quarterback?
Yes, absolutely. I enjoy.
You're not going to turn your back on him?
No.
I'd dump him, Sep. I'd dump the guy.
I can't. I'm too invested.
It's what I'm saying.
And here's the other issue. I wrote a
Marcus
column
Smart has been my favorite player for a long time. He's not my favorite player anymore. Wow. I'm fickle. He's become a detriment to the team. And Aaron Rodgers, I think, has become a detriment to society.
He has, but I mean, okay, based on the team, obviously Aaron Rodgers, like this guy is so much into drama, although he hasn't been to the Super Bowl in 11 years, although in his introductory press conference this year, he says people are coming to Green Bay to win championships. He's won one. Right. Could you picture how insufferable he'd be if he had as many Super Bowls as Brady? Like he would literally come out on red carpet. He is now, right. And look, I'm criticizing him. I'm too far into this now. Like I'm too deep that, I don't have a lot to get excited about. I love watching him play. I think he's the most gifted quarterback ever. I do, for the most part, like his personality, but this kind of really pissed me off. And it's like
such a prick move. It's just such a prick move.
I want to see how he reacts to this. Now he goes on Pat McAfee every Tuesday, right? And it's great. It's incredible content. Is he going to go, because he can't be at the facility till a week from Saturday? I think he could still do virtual meetings, whatever.
And by the way, hates the national media. Aaron Rodgers does not have a good relationship with the national media. With
certain people. I mean, like, okay,
Florio. He hates Mike Florio.
He hates Mike Florio, hates Colin Cowherd, hates Skip Bayless. Yeah. They kind of hate him back. And maybe he's kind of, I've compared him to Kevin Durant. He's the Kevin Durant of football. Seems to have issues with everyone, but is also.
No, Kevin Durant is vaccinated, so right. Edge Durant.
Edge Durant on that. No, I'm with you on that, Jet, because it just infuriated me that he put his teammates in harm's way. And again, I'm the only person that keeps bringing this up. Maybe because I've covered teams and been in those settings where you're close to a player. Like I don't want to catch COVID from a player who I think is vaccinated and he's not. And like all of a sudden I get in a lot of these reporters, some of them are older dudes that are overweight, that have comorbidities. I don't know.
Absolutely.
Like I'm just that I would be, what, if they had balls, and again, Green Bay is the biggest fanboy press corps in the country. It's if the Patriots have a fanboy press corps, they look like, Woodward and Bernstein compared to the Packers press corps.
Seen the Celtics press corps.
Oh, that's true too. Yeah, they're phenomenal. But they should walk out of his next press conference. Well, and now he's not vaccinated, so he has to do a virtual press conference. But again, Aaron Rodgers is going to speak. It's news. It's kind of like Trump.
Okay, Sap, it's news. You know the guy because you've been watching him his whole career. What's he going to say? Like, is he going to come up? Is he going to make excuses?
No. Of course,
yeah, there's no way.
He's immune, no pun intended. He's immune to well, he's not immune to criticism. He's allergic to criticism. He is the most thin-skinned athlete, again, like Kevin Durant, and most athletes are thin-skinned. He takes it to a whole other level. Yeah, I mean, and who's he going to listen to? He doesn't speak to his family, right?
No, like, he listens to his dumb
girlfriend,
fiance,
Shailene Woodley. I mean, at least if you're going to go with an actress, go out with Scarlett Johansson. I mean, he did have Olivia Munn, who was really hot.
Shailene Woodley is very nice looking, but she's a freaking idiot.
I don't think she's that nice looking either. I'm not
you
crazy
eat clay, you make your own medicine, you're an idiot. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm not actually sorry.
No,
period.
No,
you're an idiot.
No, you're an idiot. And look, I look and say, like, who's going to sit him down? It's not going to be his agent who makes 5%.
Nobody. No one's going to listen to anybody. He only seems to listen to her. Or maybe she listens to him. I don't know.
Or they're just perfect for each other. It's like a perfect match made in heaven. Like, Brady has Giselle, who's a strong woman, right? Who may at some point say, Tom, this is, you did something wrong, and I can tell you, right?
Oh, he listens to her. For sure, so. He listens to her.
For sure.
I think that's a big reason he's not in New England anymore.
Oh, of course. Yeah, she couldn't stand it here. With Rodgers, who the hell? I mean, he's had so many fractured relationships with former teammates, with coaches, look, I've never heard one bad thing about Tom Brady from a former teammate. I've never heard one. And look, Asante Samuel hates Bill Belichick. Ted Johnson hates Bill Belichick. They love Tom Brady. Like, I've never heard no one's ever Brady.
I have not heard a single bad thing about him.
No, James Harrison.
Gets ripped every other week.
Which he's the coach. That's going to happen. Not everybody likes the coach. James Harrison, who, was public enemy number one while he was in Pittsburgh, came here for a cup of coffee in 2017, hated Tom Brady and competitive on the football field. Harrison's a future Hall of Famer. The Patriots pick him up. He says, I wanted to hate Tom Brady. The minute I went into that locker room, I couldn't help but like him and want to die for him. Because Brady actually came up to him and like, hi, Jim, I'm Tom Brady. Like, no shit, you know who you are. And like, welcome to the team. You're going to be a key contributor. Rodgers has none of that leadership ability. He just doesn't. And that's the difference between the two quarterbacks. The talent, the brains, he's aces on that stuff. But quarterback is a personality position as much as anything.
Yeah.
I mean, the physical ability is all well and good. Jay Cutler can throw the
more so than anything in sports.
It is. It's a CEO. You're the CEO of the franchise. You're the face of the franchise. So you look at certain guys, and I think that's why a lot of Patriot fans are on board with Mac Jones. He seems to have the intangibles. Like, he's all in. He's coachable. I'm not sold on the physical talent, but I think you can be a good quarterback without being, the most physically gifted guy.
Sure, there's Hall of Fame quarterbacks who are not the most physically gifted guy.
Yeah, didn't have, Peyton Manning never had the strongest arm, but he was incredibly intelligent. And
Kurt Warner is a Hall of Famer. He was playing in the European League. I mean, he wasn't the most gifted player.
It's a personality position. And look at someone like Baker Mayfield, who I think is the most talented guy. I think his teammates kind of like him, but I think he just does stupid things all the time. So that's why it's so tough to draft quarterbacks. You don't know what's in there. Now, if I was advising Aaron Rodgers, he first of all would tell me go F off. He's got to apologize to the media. Again, those people they put in harm's way, to his teammates, to every member of the Green Bay organization, to the fans, because looking at it in a very narrow lens, he's hindered their chance to go to a Super Bowl. They're 7-1, fighting for the best record in the NFC. Now, maybe Jordan Love goes out Sunday and balls it, and they win the next game, and he comes back and they're on a roll. But if they start to lose a few games because he missed, or if the team kind of falls apart because players don't trust him, then he's to blame for that. So he's got to apologize to some people, but that's not in his.
You know what the NFL does not want right now is a Packers-Bills Super Bowl with all those unvaccinated players. They do not want that.
Yeah. I mean, it's crazy. I mean, and it's a great point, Jeff, because Tampa has all their players vaccinated. I'm assuming Brady went to his fellow players, not in a demonstrative way, and said, look, we want to repeat. It's important to get vaccinated, because Leonard Fournette was hesitant.
Sap, I think Brady could say, jump on one leg and, rub a piece of cheese on your head, and they would do it for him.
They would do it, yeah, because he's a leader. That's the thing. And Rodgers doesn't have that. And that's
what are you going to question him at this point? He's been to 10 freaking Super Bowls. I mean, he says it's going to help you win. He's probably no one has more expertise on winning than him.
Yeah. And Rodgers is talking about players want to come to Green Bay to play with me to win championships. I'm like, what? NFC North championships? Like that's not what we talk about.
You get a T-shirt for that.
I guess. I mean, like he's been to 1 Super Bowl. He's 1-4 in NFC championship games. I've had to defend him on all this stuff, but there comes a point where you can't go out there and say, well, the defense wasn't very good that day. He's had opportunities to do better. He had an opportunity last year. He had the ball in his hands 3 times, down 5 points with a chance to put his team ahead, and he failed.
My advice to you, Sap, pick a new guy. Dump Aaron Rodgers. Okay, this is egregious. It's egregious.
No, it is egregious, and but Justin Herbert is the hair. I call him the heir apparent because he's got a phenomenal head of hair. His last 2 games have been horrible. He
doesn't like playing against the Patriots, as many young quarterbacks have not enjoyed doing.
Apparently Baltimore either. But with him, I mean, at least Rodgers is very competitive, because he's got such a massive ego. Herbert doesn't look like the most competitive guy to me. I mean, you went to Oregon, obviously, years before Justin Herbert. I'm starting to think of Justin Herbert and Jason Tatum are the same guy, like wildly talented guys who look like they don't really care.
Yeah, except for Justin Herbert, I don't think has an ego. That's the thing. I think Jason Tatum has a huge ego about his brand. Yeah. Justin Herbert, I think is just a very more of an introverted person. I mean, he was pre-med, Sap. If he didn't do this,
he's brilliant.
He's going to be a doctor.
Guy. Oh no, that's one of the reasons I like him. I think, but can you be an introvert and be a great quarterback? I mean, do you have to be a little bit more of an alpha? Maybe look, Brady gets on the field, he turns into a psycho, right? I mean, Tom Brady looks like the guy next door, the kind of dorky dad. He gets on a football field, he turns into this killer.
Yeah, not really. I don't think you can be an introvert and be a successful quarterback. So I think, but I think that's sort of the benefit of the fact that Justin Herbert is so physically gifted and young at the same time, is that you can learn.
I think he can learn because he to me, he almost looks like someone went into a lab and made a quarterback. Like he's 6'6", 240, powerful arm, quick release, accurate. So
smart. I'd say switch. Take him. Dump Rodgers. That's my suggestion.
I'm pissed at him. Obviously, because I'm, part of me wants to look forward to the season unfold and all that stuff, but that's the minor part of it. The major part of it. This guy
what about if his press conference, Sep, he's like, yeah, screw all you. I'm going to do what I want. Just flip everybody the bird. I know. Are you going to? Okay, I want you to, Sep, it's the toxic relationship you're in right now.
I'm in a very toxic relationship.
If I had a friend who was getting verbally abused by their partner, I would say, get out of this relationship.
I gotta,
Sep, I care about you deeply. This is not good for you.
Thank you.
You need to get out of this relationship.
I've got to maybe start eating clay if that's the case. I mean, that's maybe the next thing I'll do. I'll make my own toothpaste. I mean, it's just.
Brady wants all of his guys to do pliability. Aaron Rodgers wants everybody to eat clay. I'd say I'll go with the guy who does the pliability.
Well, they're both weird guys, and we can admit that.
Yeah, they're Brady, super weird. Not normal humans.
No, and again, generally the all-time greats of what they do tend to be a little bit weird. Like, although Peyton Manning, who is one of the all-time great quarterbacks, he seems much more relatable. Now, maybe he just sells that better than anyone. Like maybe Rodgers doesn't give a F about that, and Brady does his thing. And I love watching the Manning cast on Mondays.
Yeah, but how relatable is a guy whose dad was a famous quarterback and was the number one pick in the draft and has been sponsored by a billion things his whole life and put his testicles on his trainer's face when he was at the Colts.
That's true. He's no bargain either. Yeah, I mean, none of these guys are, Drew Brees people like, but he had his issues. I mean, like Kurt Warner's the guy everybody should like. He didn't seem to have too many problems other than the fact that
another
very
religious wacko.
Now, see, you should like Rodgers because he's, I believe, either agnostic or an atheist, so that kind of fits into your.
I've always looked at it though, Sep. If you're an atheist, then instead of believing in God, you believe in science. That's how I've always looked at it, clearly he does not. So
no. And then he lied about it. That's the worst part. If he doesn't, if you don't want to get vaccinated, go ahead, but then follow the protocols that Cole Beasley and all those other lunatics are following. At least I give them credit for that. You can't have it both ways. I mean, you can't sleep with the woman and tell her that you had a vasectomy when you didn't, right? And then you can have unprotected sex. You can't do that. That's just, you lied. And he lied.
You can't sleep with a woman telling her you wear a Magnum condom and then you're pulling out a 2-incher. That's
exactly.
not
That's not good.
The situation Robert Sarver has found himself in.
That's a major issue for Robert Sarver. That story was so big, Jet, that LeBron James is out indefinitely, whatever that means, because of an abdominal strain. So that's normally like the lead news, leads the news above everything.
Yeah,
right?
No one cares. Buy stock in what Russell Westbrook if you're playing fantasy for the next week or so.
He's going to chuck up 30 shots a game and do whatever.
He'll score 40 every night without LeBron.
Yeah, or his Eastern Conference counterpart, Jason Tatum, who's shooting 38% from the floor and 26% from three and 75% from the line. How the hell does Jason Tatum shoot that? I mean,
we're back tomorrow, Sap.
Yeah, we'll discuss that.
I'm going to just destroy the Celtics because they deserve it. We'll see what they do tonight against the Heat, but it's not going to change my perception of Jason Tatum.
They'll beat the Heat. Somehow they'll beat the Heat, and everyone will say, see, they're so talented. They beat the Heat, the best team in the Eastern Conference. I doubt it. The Heat look like they're, on a mission and are actually so fun to watch, aren't they? I mean, I watched them the other night against Dallas. Ball movement, unselfishness, defense, well coached.
We'll get all into the Celtics tomorrow for sure.
Deal.
All right, Sap. This was I know this went long, but I enjoyed the entire discussion. Yeah. I've got to say.
Talked about two assholes, right? Robert
Yes,
Sarver,
exactly. Two assholes. And yet you won't leave one of them. But I'll convince you. Sap. That's gonna do it for us at the Pick and Roll NBA podcast with Jet and Sap. We are, as always, presented by Full Press Coverage. Make sure you check out our social medias for all of our opinion on other assholes. At John Sap 25, at Jet Stryer. Or if you haven't seen our podcast, the visual presentations on youtube.com/JetStryer. If not, if you want to just hear it, it's wherever podcasts are found. Just type in the Pick and Roll NBA podcast with Jet and Sap. We'll talk to you tomorrow, everybody. See ya.